Did you ever had to face an everything bagel in your lives? And do you think you may have overcome this obstacle throughout the writing of this movie?
I mean, I feel like every few years you get one where you just feel like overwhelmed. And you're like, I cannot get through this. I think most recently it's just like having a kid. I have a kid, and
For
it
sure.
feels like everything everywhere all at once. It feels like too much is happening, and you don't know if you're doing a good job or a bad job, and there is no right way to do anything, and so you're just kind of trying to survive that. So for me right now, it's probably just fatherhood. It feels like
Mhm.
overwhelming.
One of the cool things about the everything bagel became that it wasn't just scary, that it was also kind of like the peace that Jobu gets from nihilism, and I feel like I felt both those feelings when COVID hit.
Mm.
We finished the movie and suddenly this thing happened that made me suddenly like question what matters, and just watch the whole world shut down and have to just like sit at home. And some days that was so awful, and other days it was this kind of like full thing
Mm.
that I kind of learned to appreciate.
Yeah.
So it was very weird to edit this movie while trying to understand,
Yeah.
the pandemic.
But I also feel like that's probably one of the reasons why it's resonating with people, is because we all just went through that. Everyone went through a version of that, and maybe it's actually really yeah, our film is speaking to.
It's more relatable than
Yeah.
it was when we wrote it.
When we first wrote it. Exactly. Yeah.
In some ways, I think the first part of the movie, the everything section, is even more frenetic than the second one, because the characters are so caught up in their daily routines that they kind of need this multiversal detachment to reconnect and to find a dialogue within the family. And so paradoxically, they are constantly moving in the second part of the film, but it is that movement which allows family ties to rebalance. And so nobody is left alone in this multiverse. And it turns out to be the place where families can work on their issues. So I wanted to ask you, how do you think this concept of the multiversal dialogue can fit for families in 2022?
Oh man, I mean, I think one of the reasons why we were excited about the multiverse as a idea within the film wasn't just because it was like a fun, fantastical narrative element, but because it felt like it represented exactly what it feels like to exist within any community now. Like, and no matter what family you're in, that family unit is fractured now because of how easily accessible all these other communities are through the internet. And so you might have a father who is sucked into not only his work life, but also maybe he's really into sports, or maybe he's really into QAnon. I don't know. And you might have a daughter who into BTS, and she's sucked into the K-pop world, and your brother might be a gamer, and so everyone is constantly speaking different languages.
And he literally speaks the language from Avatar.
Exactly.
Like,
yeah,
I don't
exactly.
even understand what he's saying sometimes.
Exactly. And so everyone has these different communities, and they are literally speaking different languages, and so it's becoming so much harder. A lot of people talk about the family unit and what it means, and the nuclear family kind of doesn't make sense anymore, but there still has to be some version of it that some version of it that you can create, despite the fact that our current system is trying to pull it apart. And so I think that's kind of something we're playing with the multiverse in this film.
It was definitely a goal at the beginning of the movie, was to make it just a family in a laundromat, and yet make that sequence just as overwhelming as the sci-fi stuff later. And yeah, it's been interesting hearing some people disagree about which part's more overwhelming. Some people do find the multiverse a lot more manageable than like just breakfast with your parents at the beginning.
And how meaningful was it for you to feature an all Asian cast in a blockbuster, because your movie looks like one for sure? And what inspired you to put together such a comical group of actors at first sight, but which actually becomes very suitable for a multi-genres movie like yours?
Yeah, the funny thing is when we first shared the script with Michelle Yeoh, it was actually before Crazy Rich Asians had come out. And so until then, no one even knew if Hollywood would even fund a movie with like an all Asian cast. And she actually said to us, it was like very brave of you guys to write this movie with a Chinese family. But I do think one of the things that we've always done is just kind of ignore what the system is doing and ignore what is kind of within the trends, and just kind of keep your heads down and write what we wanted to write. And it took us so long to write this movie that by the time we were finished, the multiverse was cool and Asian were cool, and you know, it just happens to work out that way. But to us, it was just exciting to for me to be able to dive into my family background and make something that felt, you know, personal in that way. But we did not expect it to become such a important moment for a lot of people within the Asian American community, but also just the Asian diaspora. Just people all around the world watching this film and feeling seen through it has been really even more satisfying and powerful than we expected, because that was definitely not the goal. We were not trying to like rally the Asians or anything like that. It was just a very selfish, a lot of our filmmaking comes from a very selfish place, like
which the other like selfish no-brainer to us was like, oh, our favorite action movies are Hong Kong movies. Like so we were just like, oh, it there's personal things we can draw on, but also like, what if we get Michelle Yeoh? How cool would that be? You know, like we weren't that was just selfish. We were just like, those are the best action movies. We can make one of those.
Yeah.
Okay.